Hello there, Commonwealth from here. The Zelda Timeline is special to all of us, and we have naturally covered it completely numerous times since 2016. As it is gaming's most famous or infamous collection of legends, which makes each new entry feel part of something greater. But some of the 20 games change how we see the story and world of this gaming universe. Ocarina of Time from 1998 split the entire timeline into branches, and this continued to be the norm until Breath of the Wild convinced me and many others of a possibly even more impactful event. A convergence after 18 prior games of the timeline. And fittingly enough, the distant past events of the 20th Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, now hints even stronger towards. On top of that, we have also received a statement from the genius who has directed 6 of 20 mainline Zelda games, including Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, Hidemaro Fujibayashi. In a recent interview with Famitsu, he was asked the following question, which was translated by a Lorulean historian. Quotes, Famitsu journalist: "Where does Tears of the Kingdom fit into the Zelda timeline? Skyward Sword is depicted as the origin and Breath of the Wild is depicted at the very end, but Tears of the Kingdom is both a sequel to Breath of the Wild and reveals the story of the founding of Hyrule Kingdom. So I wonder if perhaps this is now the origin." Zelda director Fujibayashi's answer: "Without a doubt, the events of this story are set after Breath of the Wild, and fundamentally, we intend the Legend of Zelda series story and world to not break apart. So I can only say two things at this point. Keeping in mind the premise of not breaking apart, I believe that there is room for fans to think. So then this is a possibility? If I were to speak only upon the potential, it is possible that although this tells the story of the founding of Hyrule, it could have history that has previously been destroyed too." End quote. Fragment of Famitsu interview with producer Eiji Aonuma and director Hidemaro Fujibayashi. Wait a minute. Hyrule could have history that has previously been destroyed and forgotten? This part is the clearest hint towards a cataclysmic event, big enough to explain the conundrum of races and places that is Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom's Hyrule. But where in the timeline? Somewhere after the known end of the 3 branches, but long before Tears of the Kingdom's distant past memories, Breath of the Wild's ancient past tapestry, 100 years prior memories of that game, its gameplay present, and Tears of the Kingdom's gameplay present. A moment where the history of the kingdom and Hyrule itself was destroyed in a way that it was wiped clean, and no one remembered the kingdoms before Raru's, granting the Zelda team what they have been missing and needed when going open air: a clean slate. Possibly taking a page from Elder Scrolls Dragonbreak, quite fitting to Tears of the Kingdom with its many dragons, creatures of secret stones that we will return to before the end of the video. But how could this have happened? I only see one option: the forming of the rupee that we first presented in our March 2017 timeline video. A world that only knows of the prior heroes through legends and possibly the tunics located in the depths. Hidden away, or where are the hints of the connected but forgotten past? Primarily in the characters of Raru and Ganondorf, the 2 known kings and adversaries of the distant past. Their first conflict surfaced as a result of the King's Zonai and Hylian unification effort, which the Garuda King opposed. A story not so different from Ocarina of Time, as several of the scenes are taken straight from that game. Only where in that game, Ganondorf's next moves, later battles, and Zelda's actions resulted in the split of the timeline, here this whole scenario is possible as a result of a prior clash that in effect united what was divided. An event that still remains to be explained or perhaps even experienced in a future Zelda game. After all, someone was missing in Tears of the Kingdom's distant past memories, which stood in stark contrast to Ocarina of Time. The hero who rises against King Ganondorf, thus leaving King Raru and his 6 sages to prevent the triumph of darkness, and when they can only seal him, places the hope to defeat Demon King Ganondorf in Link of the distant future. A victory made possible with the power to recall, which is the main story element of the entire game. As Tears of the Kingdom opens with Zelda saving her life by recalling to the distant past with Raru's stone, and ends with King Raru and Queen Sonia's spirit using Link's recall, to restore things to their original form before Ganondorf's first gloom attack, Princess Zelda with the stone, and Link still with his original right arm. Nevertheless, for the first recall act, we learn the following. Rauru is Hyrule's first king and the founder of the kingdom with Queen Sonia. We also get a different hint of the Zelda timeline's past events being reset and forgotten. King Rauru never knew the name Link, a name which is tied to all heroes, but in his age of founding, there's no hero who rises against Ganondorf and pulls the Master Sword to stand by Rauru's side, as the ancient hero would first stand with the Sheikah against the created by the imprisoned Ganondorf, Calamity. Instead, the king himself had to fight. A battle he wouldn't even have led if it wasn't for Zelda's Purapad teleporting the royal trio of past and future away. You also have a new Kouma and Kotake behind Ganondorf, and their names engraved on his weapons and bow. Two characters who had gone in the timeline either before the timeline split in Ocarina of Time or the second game in the Downfall timeline, but alive and well in Tears of the Kingdom's distant past. We've gone over the many similarities across these two games in several videos, including the number of sages plus monarch these two games share. But it is as if past events are about to reoccur anew, which would fit perfectly if past history has been destroyed. Just in line with what the Spanish philosopher George Santayana is credited to have said, those who do not learn history are doomed to repeat it. So Hyrule does. It may not be one-to-one, but this history sure rhymes. At the same time, I want to divert our attention to the first part of Director Fujibayashi's reply. Fundamentally, we intend the Legend of Zelda series story and world to not break apart. Right here, we see how much respect there is for the series' past and its established lore. Then why resetting it after the end of the timeline? Creative freedom. You see, at the end of each of these three branches, there are so many restrictions for future games without a convergence and great reset. At the current endpoint of the Downfall timeline, the Sheikah and Gerudo are nowhere to be found. At the official endpoint of the Child timeline, the Sheikah are gone, while in the Adult timeline, the original Hyrule, or Land of Goddess Hylia, is gone. How do you work with this mess? You Ultrahand them together, just like three trees in Tears of the Kingdom. Yes, I actually got linked to Ultrahand the Timeline, as it most likely looks at the point of this game in the game. Unified, Split, Downfall branch, Adult branch, Child branch, Convergence, and Reunified branch with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom in the shape of a rupee, and I'm clearly not alone in this belief, as the official Japanese Zelda website has both a Japanese and English version of the timeline. Here you can follow each of the split branches until they transition directly over to Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. How else do you explain this than a convergence? Reuniting what was divided and creating a new beginning for the franchise and the development team. And The Legend of Zelda, which with the following clever move can both preserve the past and reference it, but also move forward into the future. By doing so, the Zelda team has made their most clever move alongside going 3D open air by creating room for endless splits and merges whenever it fits them in the future. And this is genius, as we keep our old timeline and have it connected to the new games, though only very loosely, to the point that they don't restrict the massive talent and ideas that Nintendo's best team in Kyoto is capable of cooking up. That is why the convergence makes 100% sense, as it respects the past but creates unbound possibilities for the future. It is also why I transferred from supporting the Child timeline to Team Convergence / Zelda's Dragon Break in March 2017. Speaking of dragons, they might have been the in-game hint of this move, altered from original form and eternal, but in the process, losing their past self. The definition of Dragon Break. The Zelda team might have taken the open world inspiration from Skyrim, but the destruction of history might just derive from the Elder Scrolls' notorious Dragon Break. Open world, gameplay, and story. At Triforce. But what interests me the most are dragons. Breath of the Wild introduced them, but Tears of the Kingdom added the necessary context. The secret stones, and the act of draconification. A forbidden one, as Dinrol, Naydra, and Farosh most likely ended up the way they are, by consuming secret stones, becoming eternal immortal dragons, but losing themselves in the process. Then Zelda joined them in flying above Hyrule, and finally was there to aid Link when Ganondorf refused to admit defeat and swallowed the stolen stone. A circle of opposing dragons, like in the logo of the game, and a timeline that starts as a straight line, then splits up to ultimately return back to a straight line. The perfect solution that the Zelda team came up with while developing Breath of the Wild, and then its final DLC turned sequel and 20th Zelda game. The sooner we embrace this great tool of split and convergence, and possibly new splits, and realize its potential, the more we can look forward to the future of our beloved franchise. And that is it, The Legend of Zelda series and story, which as director Fujibayashi himself stated, intend to not break apart from the other games, but rather find a way for the new gold standard of the franchise to offer more freedom, both to the players and developers. With no Tears of the Kingdom DLC planned or in development confirmed in the same Famitsu interview, this video after the September 2023 Direct felt like the right moment to address the Zelda Timeline situation. But what do you think? Is it all connected as hinted by director Fujibayashi, or do you still think that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are set in a rebooted universe and Hyrule? Sound off in the comment section down below. If you haven't already, then be sure to leave a like, subscribe and press that notification bell, as our next big Tears of the Kingdom productions are still in the future, some closer than you think. Last but not least, a big thanks to you for watching until the end, and to all our patreon.com/commonrealm patrons, and in particular, Raw producer Charles Shash. You rock, and please enjoy one or both of these two awesome videos.